Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jayson Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I am Sherrod Blakely and joined by the one, the only, Vincent Goodwill Jr. of Yahoo Sports. And yes, that's his government name. I'm not ashamed to say that's your government name. What's up, brother?
You ain't got to be ashamed to say that that's my government name because it ain't your name.
You're damn right it's not my name. Thank Lord for that. But listen, man, we just gonna cannonball into this thing this week. I mean, a lot of things are popping throughout the NBA, but certainly, you'd be remiss of not looking at the defending champs, the Boston Celtics, who are, once again, they're right up there near the top of the standings at 44-18, 4 games off the pace they were on last year. So it's not like they have had this dramatic fall off. But you've seen them play this season. What are some of your early impressions of this Boston Celtics team from what you've seen?
I mean, they look like the champions, right? Like they look like a team that is going to contend at the end of May and June. I think when you look at, I think it's been since 2018 that we haven't had a repeat champion. And one of the big reasons, Sherrod, is that there's been a lot of roster change with the Lakers and the Bucks and the Nuggets and the Warriors. Everybody else who's won since that time has had huge roster changes. You look at this team, I think they've returned their top 8 scorers from last season. And then you got Peyton Pritchard, who I thought was a walking Tommy point, turning into a 6th man of the year candidate and capable of dropping 40 in a game where, there's no Tatum or there's no Brown or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, you have that defense that can switch everything. You have the 3-point shooting where you're shooting more threes than everybody else. You're making more threes than everybody else. That's going to be the thing to carry you. I just don't think the road to the NBA Finals will be as easy as last year's road. Last year's road, they were not challenged at all. They were just that dominant, and some things broke right for them in terms of matchups. This year, they can still get there, but they're going to have some scars and bruises along the way. Like, we're going to see a lot more character in the Celtics this time around.
Yeah. And to your point, a lot of teams, obviously, whenever one team wins a title, everyone is looking at what can we do to knock them off that perch. And, the Knicks were one of the first teams I thought that really went all in because they looked at the Celtics and said, they got all them damn wings. Let's go get us a wing. And then in comes Mikal Bridges. And then they said, well, we need a stretch big. Let's go get Karl Anthony Towns. And it hasn't quite worked out how the New York Knicks thought it would be. I don't know if you got a chance to catch that game against the Lakers, but, they're a very different team when they don't have Jalen Brunson, even if it's for like 2 minutes. What are your impressions of the teams in the Eastern Conference that, have made, as you alluded to earlier, made some dramatic changes or significant changes in order to close the gap between them and the Celtics?
Look, I think the Knicks are the biggest test case, right? Like you said, the Celtics got wings. Let's go get 2 really good defensive wings. They already had OG Anunoby from the RJ Barrett trade last year. So all they had to do was go get another one. And they traded in all their draft picks, all their assets to go get Mikal Bridges on the whole, Villanova boys plan and everything else.
And then what did they do? They got rid of
They got rid of the other Villanova homeboy, Dante. It's just in the trade for Karl Anthony Towns. I think you see, Sherrod, and you remember this from covering the Detroit Pistons when they won a championship. The league changes so very quickly. Like, it goes from being a defensive league to an offensive league, from an offensive league to a 3-point shooting league. And then you're wondering what the next trend is. And teams have to, follow the trends and figure out where the league is going, while also chasing the team that's going to be at the end of the yellow brick road. And for the Knicks, they don't have the defense to compete. The beauty of the Celtics is, you can trot out Al Horford for 25 minutes a night, but you can also trot out Kristaps Porzingis, and you can morph into different forms of really good defenses alongside Tatum and Brown and then Drew Holiday and then Derek White. Like, they have arguably, I would say this, probably the best 8 players in concert in the game, even though Cleveland is on a crazy, crazy run right now. And when Cleveland, a team that the Celtics beat in the second round last year, but it's a completely different ball club this year, they're running away with home court advantage. I don't know if that's going to be as big of a factor when you go into a 7-game series. All you're saying is, if you're the champs, we got to win one game on the road.
Yeah.
We have to steal a game 5 or a game 1 or a game 2 in that building to flip home court advantage, so it doesn't go to a game 7 on the road where anything can happen. I think they're more than capable. I just wonder if the Cleveland Cavaliers of Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell, if those boys have grown up in such a way that won't even matter.
Yeah, I mean, and with the Celtics, not only are you talking about the defending champs, but you're also talking about the best road team in the NBA. So if anyone is built to snatch one from in your crib, they're built for that, for sure. And you mentioned Cleveland because obviously they're having a great season. Donovan Mitchell, Mobley, Jared Allen. You go down the line, and they're having lots of impact players. But what do you see them needing to do to get past a team like the Celtics? Because obviously the way they play this year, that is the only thing that can really make this season feel like it's a success for them.
I think for them, Sherrod, it's a matter of putting the Celtics in positions they don't want to be in. Like putting the Celtics in spots where you have to overuse Al Horford or you have to overuse Kristaps Porzingis, who I think has played 25 games, this season. And it felt like they didn't need Porzingis a lot last year. It almost felt like he was a luxury to a large degree, but when he played, they were really, really unbeatable, right? So I look at Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. If you wind up putting yourself in positions where you can't hide, but you can't put Jayson Tatum, who's a very tall wing, but you can't put him on at Evan Mobley because Evan Mobley is beating them down there. And you have to play both of your bigs at the same time. And you wind up putting yourself in a position where a DeAndre Hunter, who they acquired at the trade deadline, once again, as a wing to guard Tatum and Brown, like that's the benefit of being the champs or the curse of being the champs. Everybody is going to gear their personnel towards beating you. And that's where DeAndre Hunter comes in so that you don't have to overtax Donovan Mitchell or put Darius Garland in a spot too many times during the game where he's being switched on to Tatum or Brown. But if the Cleveland Cavaliers can find a way to compromise the Celtics defense, to put Mobley in a spot where he goes full Tim Duncan against Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown, then you've got yourself a real shot. Because I think Donovan Mitchell's just lying in the weeds, just waiting to take over and be the playoff destroyer that he's been. I just don't know that that's going to be enough. They're going to need a second guy that's going to really have to make the Celtics uncomfortable.
And that's the thing about Donovan that has been really interesting because we've seen Donovan go into full-blown takeover mode, and he's a killer. But when they've played the Celtics this year, it's actually when he has deferred for a significant portion of the game and just get his points here and there. But he wasn't ball dominant, ball hawking, looking to jack up every shot. And I'm curious if he's going to stick with that program in the playoffs, or is he going to revert to what I think comes instinctively, and that is, I got to lead this team. I got to be that. I got to be him. I'm not sure which way he's going to swing come playoff time.
Well, the funny thing is, you can use the Celtics as a guide because we felt last year, what are Tatum and Brown going to do when stuff gets tight?
Right.
Are they going to continue to play within the system, the ball movement, the three-point shooting, the drive and kick? Or are they going to go heavy into ISO? And those two guys resisted the urge. Whether it was because the competition never got so tight that they had to resist their own urges, or they were that much more mature than they had been in the previous 2 or 3 years, they never veered from the path. And Tatum, I give a lot of credit to last year because Jaylen Brown was that guy on both ends of the floor. Then we find out that Jayson Tatum still holds a little bit of something from not being Finals MVP and all these other things. But when I look at Donovan Mitchell, I look at a guy, he's 6'1" and change. Like, he's not the biggest, tallest dude. I think it's going to be a little more difficult for him to resist the urge. Not that he can't do it, but I think, if you saw last Friday as a guide, when the Celtics had that huge lead at home on national TV and the Cavs walked them down from the second quarter on, That might be the thing. That might be the game to give a guy like Donovan Mitchell the confidence to say, you know what? I can trust my teammates. I can pick and choose my spots. And in the fourth quarter, when we're ready, they're going to turn the game over to me.
Yeah, because, I mean, really, pretty much every time Donovan Mitchell – he's one of the highest scoring players in NBA history against the Celtics. And so this has been basically par for the course for him to put up big numbers against him. But, the one thing, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, Porzingis, he was a luxury last year. When you think about they brought him in to be the X-factor difference maker, and he spent a lot of time doing what you and I were doing, watching the playoffs, chilling, zooted up on the sideline. And it doesn't appear that is going to be the case this year. But here's the thing, though. And I kind of put him in what I call the OG portion of the program. You got him. He's missed 5 of the last 6 games for Boston. You got Jrue Holiday, who's missed like 9 of the last 12, 5 of the last 6. And Al Horford is on, he's a lifetime member of load management program. When you think about those 3 guys, when you think about Porzingis and Jrue Holiday, I want to focus on those 2. Who means more to this Celtics team when it comes to getting to the finish line and repeating as champions?
That's a great question. I feel like this year it might be Porzingis, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's a 3-level scorer, and you don't have that You don't have that as for a player his size. Like he probably, Sherrod, I would venture to say, and this might sound like blasphemy, he's the most talented player on this roster. Woo! He's not the best player on the roster, but he's the most talented player on the roster. He's the player that you have to game plan around the most. Like a lot of Tatum and Brown is, to me, they're going to make shots or they're going to miss them. You put your defenders on them and you figure out and you let them do their thing. You put Mikal Bridges on them or you put OG Anunoby on them and you let them do their thing. You put DeAndre Hunt on them, you let them do their thing. There's not much adjustments you're going to do. For Porzingis, you got to decide, are we switching? Are we fighting big with big? Like, are we double teaming him? Like, he makes the situation a lot more complicated, I think. And last year he was a luxury. This year he's not. This year he's a necessity. He is not on the shrubbery of things. They need him, and that's why I look at a guy like Jrue Holiday as well. If Jrue Holiday doesn't have it on one end of the floor, then Peyton Pritchard, who I'm still surprised that teams are letting take 10 threes a game, but he's taking 10 threes a game. Like, there's an offensive option there. Derek White, we know, can strap up on defense. And while you'd rather have both, if you need to get a stop and Jrue is hurt or doesn't have it, you have an alternative option. There is no alternative option if Kristaps Porzingis does not have it going. And that's why I think he is the critical element of all this.
Yeah, I mean, the way that he has played, not just this year, but just since he's been a Celtic, you knew he could get buckets. You knew that he could stretch the floor. But his presence defensively has been really surprising because teams, they don't really challenge him a lot, in part because he's long as hell, and in part because he takes up space.
Yeah, it's huge. Like, I don't think people realize the benefit of being 7'4" or whatever the hell it is. And it's not getting to the rim. It's not at the rim that's the biggest problem. It's getting there. You can't challenge them at the rim if you can't get to the rim. And that's where the length comes in. And that's where Jayson Tatum being 6'10" comes in. That's where all of the collective Celtics defense, you almost see the Lakers playing like that in their own way, except they don't have size at the rim. They've just made a committed effort to jump out at shooters and to keep you out of the paint. That's pretty much what the Celtics have done for the past year and a half since Joe Mazzulla has started coaching, and this team has looked the way that it's looked. You may be able to get Porzingis at the rim because anybody can get got. I just don't know if they can get there.
Right, absolutely. We're going to talk about the Lakers in a minute, but first, I want to give a quick shout out to our good friends at Prize Picks. The second half of the basketball season and its home stretch is here and upon us, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for playoff position. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. And again, it's the best place to win cash while watching your favorite players. They also offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, which is where Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. They've also invented the flex play, which means you can still crash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So how do you get in? It's real simple. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first game. Let's play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, we're going to talk about the Lakers for a little bit. They look pretty damn good. They look pretty damn good. What is your impression of this team pre-Luka, post-Luka? Because they ain't the same crew, obviously.
You know, I thought Anthony Davis was playing the best basketball of his career by and large, right? And I still didn't think the Lakers had enough to really put themselves in position to be a championship type of ball club. And then the Dorian Finney-Smith trade happened, which I think has kind of gone overlooked because of everything that's happened with the Luka Doncic trade. And that was the trade where I was like, ooh, this gets things a little interesting. They got D'Angelo Russell out there, who everybody knows they've had a hate relationship with.
Yeah.
And then you bring in this wing, this rugged wing that will defend everybody.
Grimy.
And he doesn't care, and he's grimy, right? He's addicted to the grind, right? And then you go, and now that trade makes a lot more sense when you understand that this Luka Doncic Anthony Davis trade had been in the works for well over a month. Like, you can do two things at once. But while I thought they were good, I didn't think they were championship level. I don't know if they're championship level now, but the evidence is starting to add up to where you cannot exclude them in championship level conversations when you've got two superior players in LeBron at his age and Luka Doncic rounding into shape, keyword round. You know what I mean? Like, when you've got those two guys that can manipulate the game in such a way, they can manipulate time and score, they can manipulate pace, they can manipulate style. Like, that is something that is Sherrod. It's scary because everything that we've been taught about basketball, playoff basketball recently, is you got to have size, you got to have defense. The Lakers don't really have size, but they got defensive effort. The question is, can what they're doing, can this keep up throughout the course of 4 playoff rounds? Can LeBron stay upright for 4 playoff rounds? And can they make this happen? We've seen Luka wear down physically and mentally in the playoffs. And I think the Boston Celtics are a huge reason why Luka Doncic is no longer in Dallas, mind you, because of what happened in that NBA Finals. But if Luka Doncic has LeBron James next to him in this year's NBA Finals, baby, I don't know what that result's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, you have two of the highest basketball IQ players on the floor every second of the game, damn near. And so they're more, more times than not, they're going to make the right play. They're going to do the right decision. But I look at the players around them, and I understand why they wanted Mark Williams. Because when I look at Jackson Hayes, I'm thinking, if I'm looking at my scouting report and I'm looking at what's the one area that I might be able to exploit, it's Jackson Hayes. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, if I'm Kristaps Porzingis, I'm getting 20, 10, and 6 on this cat. And that's if he doesn't foul out before I can get 20, 10, and 6 on him. I think that there's some – and the other thing, too, with the Lakers is that, as great and awesome as LeBron and Luka are, they have guys around them that have no true sense of what deep playoff run is about. And they're leaning on those guys to get them through now. And those guys are doing great in the regular season, but we've seen enough NBA basketball to know that the regular season and the playoffs, 2 completely different leagues. And you have to be built differently, from one to the other. I mean, that's why guys like Robert Horry could be bruh-man chilling for the regular season. Come playoff time, he's your best player. When the last 2 minutes of the game when the game is on the line, he's your best player. And you've seen that throughout the course of NBA. And you've other guys who are in your top 3, top 4 all season long, and then come playoff time, they're like that little slug in the rain. Put a little salt on them, and they just shrivel up. And all of a sudden, you don't even recognize them from what they were in the regular season. I'm concerned that the Lakers got a few of them cats on their squad. Guys who may shrink in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see Dalton connect a rookie.
And he's got some serious low-key suppressed beef with the Lakers for obvious reasons.
Yeah, they tried to trade him.
Yeah.
They didn't try to trade him.
Now you need me to ball out.
They did trade him, and then you had to figure some stuff out on the back end with the Mark Williams stuff.
Right.
We've seen Austin Reeves go on a deep playoff run with the Lakers when they got swept by Denver in the Western Conference Finals, when we gave the Lakers honorary championship rings for, giving the Nuggets a tough run and a sweep, right? Gabe Vincent has made a playoff run with the Miami Heat.
Yep, we saw that. Yep.
Dorian Finney-Smith has played not in last year's Dallas Mavericks, but the Mavericks team that went to the Western Conference Finals in 2022 when they lost to Golden State. Like, there are like Jackson Hayes is the guy because he's the only big that they have, and physically he's got the tools. He's long, he's athletic, he's jumpy and all. He doesn't rebound very well, but maybe that's where you're asking LeBron and Luka to get down and dirty and rebound at a higher rate. I'm wondering what happens when teams decide we're going to just beat you up. Like, our team's built to beat you up anymore. Like, if it's Nikola Jokic and everybody is so addicted to that one Saturday night game where the Lakers gave Jokic all the trouble, you're telling me that that's going to happen in a 7-game series? I'm very fascinated to see if that will be the case. I don't think that the result may be different, right? It may not be a sweep. It may not be a 5-game series, whatever it is. It may be different, but the result may end up being the same because that dude is the best player on the floor, and the Lakers just may not have the bodies to really throw at him. They may have bodies to throw at him. They may not have the right bodies to throw at Jokic.
Yeah. And, the road that they're going to have to take is similar to what you were talking about with Boston. It ain't going to be easy for the Lakers.
No.
I mean, they're playing great basketball, but obviously OKC, is the head of the snake, so to speak, in the Western Conference. But what are some of the teams that you think are in that small pool of title contenders coming out of the West, obviously besides the Lakers?
I think, once again, Denver, because they've done it. I look at Denver. What I thought was going to happen last year was going to be a Boston-Denver NBA Finals. And I thought that was going to be the ultimate contrast in styles, right? Celtics getting up and down, the way that they played against Denver, and Jokic beating on you and forcing you to switch up your style of play. I wonder if that winds up being the finals matchup a year removed. Jamal Murray has been excellent in the last 2.5, 3 months. Can he sustain that? It's largely a motivational thing for a guy like him. Does he have that extra gear? Does he want to have that extra gear in a playoff series? The Golden State Warriors, who since they've added Jimmy Butler, they're 10-1. And the one game that they lost was a game to the 76ers where the 76ers were just shooting the lights out and you just happened to catch them. Like, that's a team that I wonder, Sherrod, once the playoff seedings are dropped in there, if they're in the 4-5, if the Warriors are in the 4-5 spot against the Houston Rockets or the Memphis Grizzlies, they don't have any fear. Steph Curry don't got no fear walking into your building. Jimmy Butler don't got no fear walking into your building. And then things will really get interesting because it sets up a Warriors Thunder, old versus young second round series, or a Lakers Warriors second round series, depending on, how things shake out. So I think from what I see, I don't think Houston is a contender because they're too young. I don't trust Ja Morant because he has not elevated his game to that extra level this year since coming back. So I'm Xing them out as good as their regular seasons have been. I don't know what to make of the Minnesota Timberwolves, even though they've played better, but they're still in that play-in spot. So I feel like there's 3 main contenders and then a 4th being Golden State.
Mm-hmm. And those contenders, they all have, the type of players that can put a team on their back and will them to victory.
Yes.
There's no one better than that in our era than LeBron James. I think back to that Cleveland team. My God, that might be the worst roster of an NBA champion in the last 20, 25 years. But the thing about LeBron, at this point, he's balling. We're seeing, this is like top 10 LeBron that we're seeing right now. Where do you see him? And again, there's been talk all season long about the MVP race and SGA and big fella Jokic, being top two, but it seems like there's a lot of opportunities to be in that top five. Is LeBron a top five MVP candidate for you this year?
It's cute to say, right? But we're grading him on the curve. He's cute for a 40-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, no, he's not. I'm sorry. I think what he's doing is remarkable for a 40-year-old. I think what he's doing is remarkable for this Lakers franchise because it's so unexpected. But when I think of MVP, I think about doing it for the entire year. I think of Jayson Tatum not getting enough MVP love for what he's doing with the Celtics. Even though I don't know if he's face of the league material, I do think that he's MVP material. I look at a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who we say, hey, sometimes you have to tone your game down. And if you tone your game down, then the individual rewards will come. And he's done that. And the Cavaliers are on a, more than 60 win pace. They're going to win in upwards of 63, 64, 65 games this year. Like, usually that means that you have an MVP candidate amongst you, and it's not just a concert of really good players. One guy has to be the leader of the pack, and that could very well be Donovan Mitchell. Like you said, then you have Jokic, and then you have SGA, and then you have, the Jalen Brunsons. Let's not forget the big fella in Milwaukee. Why are we sleeping on Giannis?
We act like he's new to this.
I think we have decided as a media and the basketball community that Giannis is just over there. You know what I mean?
He's
30 years old. He's just over there. He's going to do what he does. And then we're going to look up and we're going to be like, man, we didn't appreciate Giannis as much as we should have. Yeah, because y'all over there acting like what he's doing is normal. Do not sleep on Giannis in the Milwaukee Bucks in a playoff situation if they are healthy. Do not sleep on Giannis in this MVP conversation in terms of where he finishes. I don't think he's going to finish above Shea, but I think he's going to receive a lot of consideration once people start going into their deep dives.
Yeah. You touched on something earlier that I think is interesting, and it's a conversation we've been having a lot in Boston, and it's about Jayson Tatum. And just not so much the face of the league, and all that, but just the fact that you look at his numbers, you look at the wins, you look at the impact that he has, and yet there seems to be like a disconnect between all the receipts that he's bringing to the counter and him getting the desserts, the just due that someone who has all of their receipts bring to the table. Why do you think there's that disconnect between Tatum and the whole MVP conversation?
Well, it's a number of things, right? I think his game isn't flashy, right? His game doesn't pop off the screen to where you're like, man, that's an MVP. It doesn't. It's very effective. You know what I mean? It is very effective. It's effective. It's efficient. You look at his numbers and you're like, man, I didn't know he's averaging 6 assists a game. I didn't know that he was as good of a distributor as he's been. And I think in some ways we have our minds made up about players. We are people of first impressions. And while we allow people to grow, we're not necessarily going to change how we feel about you in that way. We looked at Jayson Tatum as a guy who, okay, he's a scorer, but he's not necessarily a guy that's going to get up off the ball. He's a good defensive player, but how good of a defensive player is he? And he's closed the gap on all the things that we believed to be weaknesses in his game. He's just not a flashy, spectacular player where you really have to change what you think. And it's almost like personality-wise, he's begging for us to love him, except he's not doing anything extra above and beyond from a personality standpoint. I think his game is pretty effective. I think he's consistently in that top 5 MVP conversation. I just wonder if he is a victim of the Celtics overall team building, where you're saying, you've got a great team around you consistently. You don't have to lift these guys up. These guys are all lifting each other up.
Yeah, especially when you got guys like Derek White, making big shots down the stretch. Peyton Pritchard giving you buckets off the bench. Al Horford, putting Father Time in the closet for a hot minute and getting you double-doubles, things like that. Well, one way that Jayson Tatum can get some love is this weekend when the Celtics host the Los Angeles Lakers, who we were talking about earlier. Now, this is obviously a big game. I mean, hell, look at the ticket prices for this game. And they're like playoff ticket prices for this that you don't normally see, even for the Lakers-Celtics rivalry. These tickets are more expensive than usual. what do you expect to see in that game? And more specifically, who are some of the players that you're going to be paying close attention to in this game, and why?
I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to Jaylen Brown.
Yes.
A lot of attention to Jaylen Brown.
Yes, nephew.
Because he was the guy who had to defend Luka Doncic in last year's NBA Finals. And Luka Doncic is the best player on the Lakers. And everything that the Lakers are being built around for now and for the future is for Luka Doncic. Does Jaylen Brown have the engine on a Saturday night with the rigors of the NBA schedule, to rev it up and to get into Luka's face and to also make him work and make him miserable on the other end of the floor? Like, how Tatum and LeBron are going to play. You can't really hide. Like, LeBron, just the one thing about it. LeBron can't hide on defense against any of these dudes. Like, you put on Derek White, you've got to chase him around the perimeter. You put him on Jayson Tatum, you're going to be going through a lot of ball screens, and you got to negotiate that type of stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe put him on Al Horford, but at the same time, that's a big, strong dude. You know what I mean? That's a dude who's used to playing in the trenches. So I'm looking forward to seeing, how the Boston Celtics fans react to Luka Doncic, right? And I'm also looking forward to seeing how Jaylen Brown looks at Luka Doncic like he did last June as food and says, I'm going to make you're going to be the dot on my wall on this Saturday night. And I'm going to see what happens. I'm very, very curious for that.
And to the Celtics' credit, they, even though they haven't specifically spelled it out, there was a load management program that they instituted this week where Jaylen Brown played one game, Tatum didn't. Tatum plays the next game, Jaylen sits. All leading up to those guys getting a little bit of rest, more than they usually do, before Saturday night's game against the Lakers. This is one of the most highly anticipated games because to me, the Celtics, they've shown the ability to rise to the occasion when the opponent has been good or really good, but they've struggled to do it at home. I almost feel better about them if this game were in L.A. than I would the fact that they're playing in front of their fans. Why do you think that is? I mean, why are they such a good road team and they're like pedestrian-esque at home?
Look, you go back to a team you used to cover. If it ain't rough, it ain't right. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it feels like to some degree, where if the circumstances are optimal, you got the home atmosphere, it's an intimidating. It can be an intimidating atmosphere, and you tend to rely on that a little bit more. You tend to relax a little bit more. When you're on the road, you know that the margin for error is not very high, not high at all. So you are a lot more focused. The Celtics, can mess around with the game because of the 3-point shot, because of just how they play. When you take so many threes, you can get a little loose with it, and you wind up putting yourself in bad situations where you can be up 20, and the next thing you know, you're up 10, you've lost control of the game. Whereas when you're on the road, even though you're up 20, you're up 10, you've got to continue to push because you know that team is going to make a run. I think that's where the Celtics tend to relax a little bit more. But I wonder if this game, Saturday night on national TV, everybody's looking forward to it. Probably is going to be one of the highest rated games of the year, and especially at this part of the calendar where both teams are sort of rounding in the playoff shape. The Celtics need to send the message, not just to the Lakers, but to the entire league. And I think that's the thing that's going to get their dander up, even though they're at home.
So, my last and final question for you, nephew. Celtics, Lakers, who getting that dub on Saturday night?
I tend to think the Celtics will do it just because the Lakers are flying cross country today to come to Boston. And they had a very taxing game on Thursday night against the New York Knicks, where LeBron had to play a lot of minutes, Luka had to play a lot of minutes. The Celtics were fine. The Celtics did not have to expend a lot of energy against the Philadelphia 76ers. They've been at home. And I think the Celtics probably need this game a little bit more than the Lakers do. People will not put a demerit against the Lakers if they lose this game. People will start trying to look at the Celtics funny in the light if they lose this game at home.
Facts. Because I know we will be clowning them if they lose this game at the crib. That's 100. Well, this was good. My man, Vincent Goodwill, Yahoo Sports. I didn't go with the full government name that time. You see that? That's my gift to you.
I appreciate that, because the next time you do it, I'm sure it's not going to be a gift.
No. Vince, again, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. And again, for folks out there, download this episode. It's available on all your podcasting apps. And again, another shout out to our good friends at Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Check it out. And again, this is Sherrod Blakely for Vincent Goodwill. Big 3 NBA Podcast. We out.